Hey, it's Dr. O here, and welcome to Health Caring Differently, where we inspire diverse youth to explore careers in healthcare. I implore you, invite you to tune in every Tuesday at 7 p.m. for the show, but also follow us on social media. On our platforms, we want you to be able to stay in the loop, gain valuable resources, and hear about, the next episode or next stream. Also, please do sign up for our newsletter. So, this show is about inspiration. You're going to hear from our guests and be inspired, hopefully, to go into healthcare. But the newsletter is the information. That's what connects you to the different diversity programs, scholarship opportunities, research, and summer job opportunities. So, please sign up for the newsletter. So, the QR code is there, or you can go to healthcaringdifferently.com. And then finally, for tonight, feel free to drop your questions for our guest in the chat during the stream, and I will ask them for you. I promise. Okay. So tonight we've got Dr. Andrew Thomas. Dr. Thomas is the past president of the Black Physicians Association of Ontario. Whoop, whoop. Shout out to BPAO. He attended Howard University, HU, I think that's how they say it, for medical school, and now works as a family physician. He completed his family medicine residency at Queen's University and now teaches and precepts for students and residents there. He served as a co lead for the Black Health Vaccine Initiative, which was the clinic in Durham during the COVID-19 pandemic, and is also the chair of the BPAO board. Welcome, Dr. Thomas.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited, looking forward to the chat.
Yes, I'm excited too. I couldn't say it in the bio. I didn't want to make it like about me, but I mean, I have known you for a long time, even, in the early days before residency. And then we served together as president and vice president. And then we, were involved in the Black Health Vaccine Initiative. So we go way back. So
way back.
Yes. way back. But yeah, no. It's a pleasure to have you here. And I'm really happy to I'm happy to have you because I know you, but also the kind of ways that you're health caring differently, like just in the bio, right? Like as a family physician, like right now, everybody's talking about primary care, and there's actually even just not even just primary care, but we're hearing it's trending on like Instagram and TikTok that people are leaving the field of medicine, right? Like people are leaving, and you are so passionate about it, like you are in it, you are teaching, you work as a coroner, you work in the health of the incarcerated, you are leading in the BPAO. So obviously there's a beauty and a passion and a desire to serve that's like really cool. So that's me gushing on and on about you, but I'm gonna let you say it. How, Dr. Thomas, are you health caring differently?
Yeah, and thank you. I forget some days, but definitely do lots of different things. Have to remind myself of the calendar where I need to be tomorrow. But tis the season. I find lots of us in healthcare are, and you well know what it's like day to day. I am repping Howard University, and I
Did
do
I do it
have,
right? HU? I remember that
yeah,
from the
you
parties.
know, you
Okay,
got it.
right? Okay.
The real HU. So I'm Canadian, from GTA outside of Toronto, but had the opportunity to go down to DC and study medicine at Howard University, and that was definitely a transformational experience. Um, Obviously, being Black, being proudly Black. My parents have always had a tradition of giving back. My background's Jamaican. They just packed and sent their barrels full of
Aw.
stuff to head back and donate to give to family and friends that they have back
Mhm.
home. So it's always been something, that's been close to my heart. But Howard definitely opened my eyes in a different way to
Oh, and
some
some
of the.
people might not know about the history of Howard University, right? So do you wanna just give a little bit of context about what makes Howard University so special?
Thank you. Yes. No, it's yeah, I jumped right past that, but no, you're so right. Like storied history for sure. So it's historically black college, um, university. There's a bunch of them, but Howard definitely I think is number one. Well, Renee,
Mhm.
I'm in a safe space. I can say I'm so sad that Kamala Harris is not the next president.
Mm.
Is vice president and alumni of Howard University. Um,
Yes.
Other important people pass through the doors, and so basically started kind of after slavery to train black students, and then Howard has played a huge role in not only training African American students, but just like being the mecca
Yes.
for black people really around the world, and it was a neat experience to be there, just kind of to be in that experience, walking to class and seeing all the really important people who are alumni on the walls, and then
Right.
it's really kind of being in that super safe space, being amongst, it was a unique experience where, I did some of my training here back in Canada, and it really did sort of switch things around where, at Howard, being a majority black school, it was, yeah, there were a lot of friendly, familiar faces around. Uh,
Yeah.
did different things differently. I remember during orientation week, there was a fish fry. Uh, in the OR, they would often, there was always like rap or hip hop playing, so it
As
was
it should be
as it
in
should
the
be.
OR. Mhm.
So it was definitely, it was a great experience based on the history of the university, but also just cutting edge education.
Mhm.
I have had the opportunity. Anyone who has a chance to study there at any level, I would recommend it. But really, it sort of transformed. Made me open my eyes to a lot of the experiences that I had growing up
Mhm.
that weren't so nice. Being
Mm.
growing up in the GTA, and then really made me better understand a lot of the structural issues that make it difficult for students to get into medicine in this country. And that led me to the Black Physicians Association of Ontario. And then, I just try and have influence everywhere I can. And that's probably why I have all the jobs that I do, like most of us do.
Yes. But no, that's really cool how Howard, like shaped your experience. And actually, because we have, students who are interested in, healthcare broadly, but quite a few are interested in medicine. We have listeners who are, Black, Indigenous, racialized, and Howard, although it's predominantly Black, also has other racialized groups, and also white folks. There are white folks I've seen. Like I haven't been to Howard, but I know that certain white folks do go. So it's majority Black, but there is a diversity there. And so, question to you, on behalf of, I'm thinking about our audience is, as a Canadian student, what was the process like in, applying to Howard, or how does that work? Or is that still the same? Like, is the pathway for a Canadian to Howard still a possibility now?
Yeah. Great question. And yeah, you're so right. Like, really now, I think Howard was probably the most diverse med school maybe in North America. Like, it was a great mix of students from all over and of all backgrounds. I think that definitely the common theme was people who had an interest in Black health, and so that's what led you to there. And but it's not a quota based program. We know the challenges those programs have, so it really just is. For those who have an interest, that shines through your experiences and through, if you have a chance to interview and things like that. That's what makes a difference in terms of getting in. So, I talk often a lot about, when it comes to thinking about medicine, you know, there's more spots now in Ontario and across the country, but it still
Mhm.
can be quite competitive, as all your listeners know, to get into medicine.
Yes.
I was able to get through on my second try, but that's probably more the, that's kind of probably I think most people's experiences now, rather than say getting through on a first try. And I,
Mhm.
I didn't get in after third year, which I guess can still happen, but I had to, and not had to, I was interested and did a master's in public health along the way as well,
Mhm.
before applying and then getting in at Howard. So all of that to say is that I think it's important for anyone who's considering medicine to think about, not only Ontario and then the rest of Canada, but also the US. Things are changing, and I'm not the most up to date with where things are in terms of like residency applications, and how that may look down the road. But I think it's important, and that kind of a whole conversation for another day. But I
Mhm,
think essentially it's important to consider.
mhm,
People may choose to go all over the world to study medicine, but I think it's a bit of a disservice if you don't at least look at the US first, because there's many more pathways to come back home to Canada if that's what you so choose. And
mhm.
there's lots of quality institutions like Howard and many other HBCUs
Yeah.
that people should consider.
Mhm. Yes,
Yeah.
no, I think that's wonderful, and yeah, I think sometimes as Canadians, sometimes, HBCUs are not on our radar, so these historically Black colleges and universities, but gives an opportunity for, like you said, to be able to focus on Black health, to be able to focus in a, on a different to learn in a different way, right? They're like they are probably the classic example of health caring differently, right? Like they've been doing everything differently from the beginning. So that is cool. So we do have a question. So we have a question, and then I have another question for you. So I'm really curious about the health of the incarcerated, but we're going to stick to HBCUs because we have a question that just came in on Instagram. So Amber Claire asked, "How do Canadian universities compare to HBCUs in terms of student well-being?" I
Mm,
can imagine it is easy to feel more seen as a Black student in an HBCU.
that's a great question.
Hmm.
Um, there's many different parts to that. You know, when I think about wellness and when I contrast, I guess, so I also, after doing medicine at Howard, I came back and I did my family medicine training at Queen's. Um, and
Which,
so,
for those who don't know, is quite a contrast, especially back then. Like,
yes,
Queens is in Kingston. I don't know what the population of Black people are, but anyways, it's the opposite
it
of
was the
how we're going
opposite.
on.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Go on.
And, I think an institution can do a lot to help with wellness, but really the things that lift you up is being around supportive people. And so to me, nothing could really take away from the fact that if you are in a space where you have lots of students around you who have experienced similar challenges, and who know how to support you, often by looking like you're having similar experiences, that plays a huge role. So not to say that you could only study at an institution that was predominantly Black or predominantly Indigenous, but that was important for me. And then Howard, it was top of mind. We didn't have a course on racism, but they knew, our faculty knew, our wellness folks knew, the administrators knew that once you left the safety of being at Howard, you were likely to face other experiences. So from day one, and it's unfortunate we still live in a world where it's needed, but they would prepare us for the realities that were going to happen once we left. So we got sort of that other education about how to thrive in spaces where we are likely to be the lonely only. The one challenge, I think, the third thing, second, third, first, I forgot my numbering, but like the
Okay.
other thing I think that can impact students is like, certainly if you have like personal or family health issues that happen, and that can happen regardless of the institution, but it's important how an institution supports you. But finances can be challenging as well. So, a lot of the stress that some of my classmates experienced was due to some of the financial challenges that can come up. As you can imagine, going to the US can be expensive, the dollar and tuition tends to be a bit more. But I would say if there's a will, there's a way. You can still get in Ontario, OSAP to help support. You can get a line of credit. Hopefully, there may be some family. And then I was able to get a number of scholarships as well at
Right.
Howard to help support me. So it, I fortunately wasn't, there, of course, there was some of those stressors, but was able to kind of make things through. And I like to stress that because people will automatically put it off as no, I wouldn't consider, but it's getting pretty expensive even in Canada to study medicine.
Yeah.
So um, one of the realties, but I think once you go into looking at an institution with kind of those things in mind and sort of feeling out how they support students in those ways, you'll really get a sense of, yeah, who's doing a good job and who's not.
Yeah, no, I think that that makes a lot of sense, and I think, yeah, I mean, obviously, our social environments are play a huge key in our wellness, but it's not the only factor. There's numerous factors, and as you said, like there's the financial strain. There might be things going on with your family, which might actually, because it's so deeply racialized and historically segregated in the United States, there may be a myriad of things affecting Black students in HBCUs. However, not being in an environment where you are regularly experiencing anti-Black racism probably is, you know what I mean, helpful. You would know
Definitely.
more than me because I stayed in Canada the whole time. But I think bottom line, as you said, it's being around supportive people, and so you can create, just like people can create their own family, you can create your own support network, even in a Canadian or predominantly white context. And I think it might be a little easier at HBCU, but I think there are things that one can do regardless to stay well during medical school, which is kind of stressful regardless of where you study. It is stressful, so no matter what, it's important to have that social intentional cultivating of a positive support group. I think you have to be really intentional about it for people who support you. Okay, we get in questions like already. I told you because usually they come at the end. It's usually like in the last 5 minutes, but they're comments. So I'm gonna be quiet and just read what I've been told to say. So, hey, Harmela asked, how does your education in public health influence the way you practice medicine? And how does your experience at Howard as a student compare to your experience at Queens as an instructor? So yeah, I mean, I had already said Queens is the opposite of Howard, so I think it makes sense. But yeah, first part is how did your master's in public health impact the way you practice?
I I think all of us, as we learn more things, we start to forget things. So I do remember some of my public health training, but I'm certainly not an expert like Dr. O. The biggest thing I think I found was I definitely have a lot more compassion, I think, and a lot of docs are compassionate, but the social determinants of health underline literally everything that patients experience. And so I try in my mind to think that, when it's one of my patients going through something, that there's something like completely out of their control likely that's brought them to this place, whether it's mental health or substance use, unstable housing. The social structures we live in make it difficult for some people. Um, and so, I think we're all trained to think in this way, but I had kind of two extra years.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe has given me sort of some extra input, I think, into sort of working through these issues. Um, and then that led to kind of my interest in mental health and addictions, more so addictions. And then that sort of brought me to working in sort of corrections and working with incarcerated patients, because there is a lot of substance use, mental health that affects the people that I see. And I know that I probably wouldn't have been as interested in that position if it were not for my training in public health prior to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe that. Yeah, I think that's one of the beauties of masters in public health. It's looking at the bigger picture. And, I mean, you might take it lightly that, social determinants of health, you had 2 years to be immersed in it, but so many of our colleagues are still quite stuck in the biomedical model, right? Like thinking everything is either biological or genetic or it's the person's fault. And what we know about the science, really, and not only social determinants of health, but really it's the social factors that determine more of people's outcomes, right? Your postal code or your zip code has more impact on your health than your genetic code, right? So that's the science, but the way medicine was taught before was about like the individual and the biology and the DNA. So I think it's quite powerful, you know what I mean, that you were able to do this. I think those who are training now totally get it, but I think for those of us who completed our medical training, like 8 to 10 years ago, right? That's about right for you, right? I'm older than you, so I'm trying to, I don't want to lump you with me. I don't want to age you, but
2017, I finished at Howard.
2017? You finished? You couldn't have finished. Wait, 2017. Oh, because yeah. So then that's okay, 7 years ago. I said 8 to 10. Okay, 7 to 10 years ago. Still the biomedical model, right?
Yep.
So there you go. So anyways, so I think it's very powerful that you did the MPH to kind of reset. But yeah, it's still an issue in medicine to kind of focus the other way, which is actually not in line with the evidence. So you finished in 2017, but now you are a professor, like doing teaching students. So how did your experience at Howard as a student compare to your experience at Queens as an instructor?
Yeah. Where to start? I think, one of the things that's is super exciting in terms of changes happening at Queens. So it is the Black student application programs, which I think exist at now every Ontario university. There's a
Oh,
lot
for
of them.
Ontario, yeah, I'm not sure about NOSM actually off the top of my head, but
Okay.
most Ontario schools and certainly nationally, because we're national, the show's national, then there's 10 Black student application programs across the
Okay.
country. Shout out to Ike Okafor, but go on.
Yes. These programs, of course, have made huge differences in just leveling the playing field, in terms of allowing more Black students to get into medicine. And so there's a lot of other people. I'm not taking any credit for this. I do work as sort of volunteer on the admissions committee at Queens, but we
Mhm.
will also be having a Black student application pathway coming through as well. So it's been
Nice.
exciting to see that evolution. Um, the one thing I think about, so, and maybe this segues a bit into thinking about working in corrections.
Mhm.
So amazingly, like, it's not lost on me, although it is, as physicians, we often forget the power and privilege we have behind the doctor.
Yes.
But I work at a provincial jail in
Mm.
Lindsay, and I've had the opportunity to precept for some students there as well.
Oh,
And
oh, that's
yeah,
cool.
I do
So
have
so
some
just so
students
everybody
there.
understands, you have medical students follow you to the provincial prison, like
hmm
to see patients there. Wow, that's
Yeah.
really cool. Okay, go ahead. I'm just
So
like,
that's
this
been
is very cool. Okay. Mhm.
Um, and I, of course, there are tons of great docs I work with and nurses and correctional officers, but again, the structure of corrections um, is bad for
Mm,
marginalized, racialized people. And
yeah.
so, I remember early off going there and going in as a doctor,
Mhm,
and whether it was the looks I got or being carded, it
mhm,
took me right down, you know?
mhm,
And so that has been a real, I can't forget. It was kind of one day. It wasn't a great day that day, but
mm,
and it was a kind of around the first that I started, but and being, I can say with certainty, the only Black doc that has worked. Well, now there's another, but the
mhm,
first, I should say.
mhm,
Um, that was a time in the career when you're coming off a high. I went to Howard, involved in BPAO, finished my residency,
yeah,
and then doesn't matter, what you've done, who you are, how you look is how you're judged.
Yep. You
And
see a Black man and all the stereotypes as you enter the space. Yeah.
yeah, so not to say, you know, I kind of deviate. I know the question was about Queens in particular. Um, you know, in my career, that moment stands out. But there were maybe some similar ones in Queen's training where I had some unfortunate experiences as well too. Um, when teaching, I use every opportunity to talk about racism in medicine. Doesn't matter if it's related or not. Hey, we're talking about blood pressure. Oh, let's talk about how some of these guidelines may disadvantage Black patients. So I think I try and infuse that into everything I do, because the curriculum is catching up. I know you've done lots of work on
Too much. I'm done.
helping medical.
Sorry, I'm joking. I'm joking. Go ahead.
But yeah, it's still a very traditional curriculum. Guidelines are just so slow to change, so curriculums are so slow to change. So I kind of have made sure that I use every opportunity I can to talk about the issues that Black and other racialized people go through.
Yeah. No, I think it says something about, I mean, I already know you, like you're very patient. So for those who don't know, when I was president of BPAO and Andrew was vice president, it was like good cop, bad cop, because I would be like, this needs to change. You need to do this. Like this is institutional racism. And then Andrew would be like, yes, what Dr. Norm is trying to say, right? And then you'd package it nicely and you would be breathing calmly, right? I remember that. It would be like, but it allowed me to just be full authentic self because I knew you would like soften the delivery after. But I digress to really say that I think you're like a patient person and like extra compassionate person because yes, Kingston has the opposite demographic as you would have experienced at Howard University. And so there would be experiences, probably more than average of being stereotyped. But you stayed to teach at Queens, right? Like, even if you decided to stay at Kingston, you didn't have to like be faculty and be part of that change. You went into the prison and, feeling like I'm coming in as the big MD, and then they just brought you right down with the stereotypes, but you still work at that prison, right? You're making a difference. You don't have to. And so I think that's very powerful, that tenacity, that calm, that patience that you have to like keep moving and have that vision of like change, right? Because like I could tell you really think that things will change. And, at least for Queens, things are changing. And I would guess, because I know you, but I don't know for sure, that you're making an impact at the prison as a Black man and with your representation. Am I correct?
Hopefully.
But I'm sure when folks see you, I mean, is there an overrepresentation? I kind of know the answer to this, but I'm asking you so you can answer yourself. Is there an overrepresentation of Black people in the prison where you work? And do you feel that at least having that representation of being a Black person or person of color makes a difference for the patients who see you in corrections?
Yeah, so as part of my training, I spent in family medicine residency. I spent 2 months working in Lindsay, just in a regular family medicine clinic. And I'm 99% sure. And so it was during that time was when I got exposure to working in the jail through one of my
Mm,
preceptors who taught for me. So the only time I saw a Black person in Lindsay was in the jail.
yeah,
So definitely overrepresentation, Black, Indigenous as well. Again, for all the structural reasons.
structural. Yeah.
And people at the Lindsay jail, I don't know exactly how the catchment system works, but people come from all over. But yeah, definitely overrepresentation.
Mm.
And so, you know, I have seen, again, nothing to do with me personally, my expertise, but again, I can kind of see when someone looks like me steps into the doctor's office, maybe the
Their eyes.
shoulders soften a little bit,
Yeah.
you know, and I think I've had some conversations that, again, maybe wouldn't have happened it's hard to talk about, say, for instance, mental health at
Yeah.
in jail or in a prison.
Mhm.
First of all, if you can imagine, a visit is there are multiple people in the exam room. So there's me, there's a nurse, the door is open, there may be two or three other patients just outside the door waiting for their turn, and there's at least two correctional officers who are one is usually standing in the door, the other may be in the hall.
Oh my God.
And it how do you talk about mental health? um,
Mm.
for those who do, you know, they must feel in a real safe space to be able to
Yeah.
talk about what's happened to them. So, but yeah, I think I've been able to have some of those conversations that maybe might not have happened.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I also know that being there and being present probably helps prevent nonsense from happening.
Mhm. Mhm.
So again, I'm not disparaging any of my colleagues. It's really the structure. When you put, like, I think any institution in Lindsay is cottage country. Um, I don't know. I haven't looked at the statistics, but it's not that diverse. I mean, a lot of more
Mm.
people are moving from the GTA up to
Yeah.
Lindsay.
Yeah.
But if you put a jail with these big bad criminals, it further enhances these stereotypes, and I think it just automatically sets up some uncomfortable, um, yeah, just interactions that may happen from time to time, despite someone's best intentions or their heart being in the right place. It's just that
Yeah.
power dynamic is huge, and so
And
yeah,
I'm just gonna jump in when you said big bad criminals. I know you meant it with like
yeah,
quotation marks, like
sorry,
big bad, not yeah, yeah. But
yes,
explore.
100%,
Sorry to interrupt.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. So yeah, so there can be a challenge there, and so I
Yeah.
think, yeah, just being there, I hopefully, and
Yeah.
like I said, now there's myself and another doc,
Yeah.
and I think just the representation, I think, hopefully makes a difference.
Representation matters. And if from what you just described, like, because I have treated folks who were incarcerated, but they were in the hospital. And so you can close the door. And you know what I mean? It's a very different dynamic. There are guards there, but you can, you know what I mean? Have privacy actually when they come to the hospital. But what you describe, I've never witnessed, right? Like it's just a complete removal of privacy. Like there's many people, including other incarcerated folks who are able to overhear. And so, what I would think is not only are you creating a safe space for those individuals who are able to tell you about their mental health issues, but that means that in their heart, there's some hope, right? You're not just a bystander that they're telling a story to. It's because they think that you, in particular, despite the privacy that's being breached, they're willing to take that risk because they feel like you could help them. And you know what I mean? So I think that's very, very powerful. So thank you for doing that work because I'm like, wow. Like I haven't done, you know what I mean? Like that kind of work. So I'm very moved by what you just described. And I think our audience is too. So a lot of questions have come in. So I don't want to
Mhm.
like hog all the time because it's 7:30. So I'm gonna dive into the questions.
Sure.
Um, Now, this actually might be related to what you just described because a question from Endless, we see you. Sorry for the delay with your question, but Endless, we see you. What unique strengths do HBCU graduates bring to leadership positions in healthcare systems? I mean, you are one of the many leaders. Maybe you're still in touch with your colleagues, or you know all those people on the wall. So we know how you're bringing it as a leader. But do you think there's a pattern with regards to HBCU graduates and leaders in healthcare systems?
Yeah, neat. I guess right off the bat, I have to shout out Dr. Nikolai White, who is, at least he was, I'm not sure if he still sits in that role, but he was the, I guess, like, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe the president and founder of, what exactly is the name of the organization? Basically, they help support Black health professionals. It's the
Oh.
Black Health Professionals Network, which is,
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
yes,
Sorry.
yes.
Yes.
So
They
he,
gave me an award. Sorry. I'm like, I'm with you. Yes. Here in I thought you were talking about it like somebody who's in the United States, but here
oh yeah,
in
yeah,
Canada, in
back
Toronto.
here, yeah,
Yes.
and
Oh,
I guess
yes.
that their network is basically a way to connect Black health professionals, so physicians and otherwise. And I think they're Canadian. Maybe it's just Ontario, but yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
he was my upper year. So when I was so he was a year ahead of me, and so he's doing really neat things back here at home. And
Yes.
then yeah, when I think about my classmates, it's so interesting. People spread out all across the U.S. and kind of hearing what people are doing is super neat. I think like you know we part of and again I know and on a high note, but part of what happens being black in medicine is you feel you need to work harder, double harder than your colleagues
Yep.
to be seen the same. And so we
That's true
were
for all fields. That's just true about being Black or also immigrant groups, a number of different groups, but feeling like you have to work twice as hard. I would argue 10 times as hard, but please go on.
10 times as hard. Yeah. So I think that kind of prepares us to have multiple roles, do multiple things, just like do it all.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's cool. That's cool. And yeah, so many amazing leaders in the United States who've come out of Howard or other HBCUs. And I think that's, making a difference on the ground or higher up, in Black health and health in general. Deontay's Handcrafts asks, how do you respond to overt or subtle racism that you experience as a doctor? Deep breath.
Challenging. It the first thing I'd say is like everyone's approach will be different, and it almost depends on the day, where you're at, you know, being get my Iraq as a leader, I guess, through BPAO, but all of us, we may feel this like need to confront and address racism every time we come across it, but you
Mhm.
can't. It's just too much. It wears on you, and so I'm protective of probably my learners and patients maybe more than myself, where if I see something, I'm definitely going to call it out. But if it comes to me, unfortunately, whether this sounds good or not, it really depends. Sometimes it may be unsafe
Yeah.
to call out overt racism when it happens to you. And so you have to take care of your safety first, leave the space, etc. And it's happened to me from whether it's colleagues or patients, and yeah, safety first. But like to protect my learners, protect patients, protect other people close to me as best as I can. Again, safety first. And
Mhm.
then when it comes to like the sort of not the overt stuff, microaggressions, etc.,
Yeah.
I've been trying to think about like, are there ways that I can use my role to sort of change things? So whether it's, am I supposed to give a lecture on professionalism and, I'm flipping through the slides. I'm like, this sounds like a really old school definition of professionalism. Basically, you're
Mhm.
describing, the older white man wearing a suit. That's what professionalism means. No,
Yes.
let's not talk about that. Let's
Mhm.
talk about what actually professionalism is. So, yeah, so that's kind of my approach to it. Everyone takes it differently, but I think really safety is number one.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's it. I think as much as I can be very vocal, I am 100% behind your it depends. It really depends if it's a patient, if it's your boss, if it's a colleague, if it, you know what I mean? It there can become and how it comes and what your options are for addressing it. Sometimes it's good to address it in the moment. Sometimes it's good to address it after, find a mentor, a champion, a safe ally. Or like you just said, like sometimes it's about just bringing it up and thinking from a systems perspective and then saying, okay, we're going to talk about this in the course or we're going to advocate for this, different policy. So there are different ways to address it. And yeah, you can't fight every battle. It's exhausting. So you pick your battles. But that being said, Dr. Thomas is very patient and very compassionate, whereas I'm just like fire, like just so everybody's different. It depends on your temperament and what's authentic to you, right? So I think that's true too. So thank you. But I'm 100% behind it depends. Okay, and we got another one from Deontay's Handcrafts. I hope we get to a place where we'll redirect funds from the prison into programs to enhance the lives of racialized groups. Yes, and all incarcerated, in fact. But yes, I hope we do get to a time where we're not so focused on incarcerating people as opposed to rehabilitating people, which would be and has evidence actually of being a better. It's not even a dream. There's evidence that that is a better approach. Okay, so we're at 7:40, so we went 10 minutes over, but it was like really fun with the questions. And I have my own questions too, because it's been a minute since, you know what I mean? Like we talked, like a lot of it was just surviving in the pandemic. So okay, so unless there are any other questions, I'm gonna ask my last question. Let me just double check. I don't know. Usually we have a few questions from YouTube, so I hope the connection was working well on YouTube. But at least we got in some from quite a few from Instagram. So thank you, y'all. All right, so let me go to my last question. So I'm gonna frame this because of what's trending on Instagram. So I always ask this question, like, what's your advice to students who are early in their journey, who are thinking about pursuing healthcare broadly or medicine? Like they're just, you know what I mean? Like they're in that early stage of thinking this is a thing that I want to do. In this context where we are post-pandemic, healthcare is, you know what I mean, where it's at. It's a bit of a, you know, I've said in my videos, it's a bit of a very, you know, messy space at times, right? Um, and and yeah, we're hearing about people, at least on social media, leaving the field. So, what is your advice to the student who has it? You know, it's just there's this fire in the spirit, in the heart, right? Where you're like, I think this is what I want to do. What is your advice to that student?
I think number one is if it lots of things I'm thinking about actually,
Name all.
but first and foremost is like if you are interested but want to know more, there are ways to find out more. Whether it's tuning in here, but there are lots of paying attention to the Black Physician Association Ontario, also through the there's programs like Ignite that are run by the Community of Support. So there's many
Yes.
different ways to learn more. So I just encourage people to learn as much as you can. And then, now you realize, yes, this is for me, whether it's medicine, pharmacy, nursing, however, like make sure that, like if there's a will, there's a way, right?
Yes.
And hard things are hard, but it just, like with some perseverance, you can do definitely what you want to do. And maybe it might look a little bit different. You might end up in the States like I did, but at the end of the day, if you stick with it, things can end up the way you'd like. Um, and then I find that it's important for they're like say we're talking about medicine in particular. People think there's something I need to do to make my application look good. I need to
Mhm.
volunteer at Sick Kids. That's the only thing. But and that's important. Volunteering at Sick Kids is important. But I think it's important to do what you like to do. If you like to, maybe it's participating in your church, or whether it's volunteering at a soup kitchen, whether it's dance or professional frisbee or what have you, like just showing that you're committed to something is really, really important. Like, there's this idea that you need to do X, Y, or Z, but there's no formula. I think just
Mhm.
being passionate about your volunteer experiences is really important. And that's what shines through more than anything else. Just doing what you love will show up in your application, and that'll hopefully help shape you into the person that will be successful in getting through whichever program.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and I think that authenticity, it does matter. Um, and then I lied when I said it was the last question. I just thought of something else that I want to add layered with this. But we're also in a time where we're experiencing a crisis in family medicine in particular. So I'm just wondering, as a, your bread and butter family doctor who does a lot of like cool different things, but still it's, all within, core primary care. So yeah, any advice do you have to give to those who might be thinking about that? Sometimes when we're pre-med, we're thinking about different things that we want to do. And then we have folks who are in the audience who are, first year, second year medical school. So thoughts on family
It
medicine?
I do really enjoy family medicine. I'm 5 years in now, so I'm getting to that zen point where I can have a visit with my patients, and it's a chat with, like, friends, and we can talk about random stuff, golf or the weather. Everyone loves to ask about, we have an 8-month-old baby. It's
Right.
shocking the number of gifts that my patients brought in. Even still, she's 8
Ah,
months. I got a book. One of my patients actually is an author, and she brought in a book at 7
oh.
months for our baby.
Oh my gosh, your baby
But
is
still
8 months already. Wow. But yeah, I'm like,
time
wow, time
flies.
flies. But yes,
But then
yeah.
still being able to, like, provide, good care, because you build this relationship that's so important that, you can get that in other areas of medicine, but I think is unique in family medicine. I now have these monster families in my practice where I've got, grandma, grandpa, and mom, dad, and now there's multiple kids, and so that's super neat too. So all those things I think are super cool. I know there are challenges, and I would never ever disparage a family doc who chooses not to do family practice, because we all have our different likes, right? That's what makes
Mhm.
family medicine so interesting. And for me, I do, like, I love that environment, sit back, have a chat, get to know the whole family, do home visits, all that fun stuff. But for
Mhm.
someone whose brain works differently, they're in the emerge or doing hospitalist, yeah, of course, that's maybe not going to be your cup of tea.
Mm.
So it takes all types of different people to do sort of a family medicine clinic. And for me, it works a lot. And I do hope, though, that people get the chance to experience that, like those who end up in family medicine, to try and see that out. Because I think if you stick with it for a while, you kind of finally get the zen moment where things really kind of settle out. It becomes a lot more fun.
That is cool. And yes, we do need more family doctors. We do need more primary care. So for those who are interested, please do explore it. At least explore it. Then you know what I mean? You know what you like, you know what you don't like, but explore. So thank you very much, Dr. Thomas. And yeah, I think it's fantastic how much you've done and accomplished as a leader, as a family physician, as a Black health leader since, yeah, graduating in 2017. I'm like, wow. So, yeah, congratulations and thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's been
Thank you. So, y'all, it was really cool to have Dr. Thomas, and thank you all for your engaging questions and everything. So, we continue on this journey next week. So, Dr. Thomas is the past president of the BPAO. Next week's guest is Dr. Mojola Omole, who is the present president of the Black Physicians Association of Ontario. And the topic will be leadership, diversity, and women's health. So please tune in next week. But in the meantime, I just want to say thank you for watching. Follow us on social media so you're in the know. Sign up for the newsletter so you can hear about community of support and Ignite and all of the wonderful things that Dr. Thomas mentioned. But until then, I will see you next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Bye.